Hello BookTube, welcome to a Better Read Sol video. I'm going to talk about what I'm planning to read here in September 2020. Now the thing is that Crusader Kings 3 comes out on September 1st, and I know that's absolutely going to take up pretty much all of my time. But despite that, I still want to try and do 2 readathons this month, because why not? The first of those 2 readathons is Space Opera September, which is hosted by Thomas of SFF 180 fame. And secondly is the Monsterathon, which is organized by Kate over at Chapter Kate. I am part of the conspiracy team, which is led by Sarah of Novel Serendipity, Noria of Noria Reads, and Margaret of Margaret Adele. I will of course leave links to both challenges in the description box down below. Firstly, I'll be talking about what I'm planning to read for Space Opera September. First challenge is a space opera novella, for which I have chosen Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This is an African futurist novella which centers around, well, a young woman named Binti who is a Himba who is the first chosen to go to this intergalactic university. The second prompt for this readathon is divided into 2 options. One, read 2 books by female authors, and they have to be space operas obviously, or just read a space opera by a diverse author with a diverse cast of characters. This I've elected to go with the first option, which means my first of the 2 books is a memory called Empire by Arkady Martin. Now this is the first in a duology and actually just won the Hugo for 2019's Best Novel. Ambassador Mahit Dijmar travels to the capital of the interstellar Tehakalani Empire. I hope I got that right, but I guess we'll see. Eager to take up her new post, she arrives only to discover that her predecessor has died, and no one will admit that his death wasn't accidental, or that Mahit might be next. Now, Mahit must discover who is behind the murder, rescue herself, and save her small but fiercely independent mining station from Tehikalan's unceasing expansion, all while navigating an alien culture that is all too seductive, engaging in intrigues of her own, and hiding a deadly technological secret, one that might spell the end of her station and her way of life, or rescue it from annihilation. The second of the 2 I'll be reading is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is another space opera series that has received quite a lot of accolades and awards over the years. From what I understand, it's a bit more character driven than most of the genre, so I'm looking forward to checking it out. The third challenge for Space Opera September is to read a space opera that was published before you were born. For this I am reading Consider Phlebas, the first in the Culture series by Ian M. Banks. This was published in 1987 and I was born in 90, so there we go. Conflict, as I understand it, centers around the one between the religious fanatic Iridans and the utopian AI culture. In this book, a shape-changing mutant named Horza is hired to find this ancient weapon that both sides believe will give them an advantage and possibly even win this long war. Alright, so the 4th and final reading challenge for Space Opera September is to read a space opera that has more than 500 pages. For this I will be reading through Unconquerable Sun by Kate Elliott. Now this is only like 525 pages, so it's not, say, Malazan series or Prior the Orange Tree size behemoth, but hey, still counts. This is billed as a feminist LGBT retelling of Alexander the Great in space, So that's pretty much all it needed to hook me. Alright, so now on to the Monsterathon prompts. Now, as I mentioned, I am an underling in the Conspiracies faction for this, so I will be starting with the ones of my team's prompts that I'm doing. Now, we are allowed to cross over with other readathons, which I'll be doing. So like for the Area 51 prompt, which involves reading a book with aliens or mutants, I'm pretty sure that my space operas will have that covered, so check. Also, one of the prompts is the Upside Down, which involves reading a retelling. Now, I could probably just use Unconquerable Sun for this, but there's actually another book which I've been wanting to read that I will use to fulfill this. That is The Queens of Innis Lear by Tessa Gratton. This is a feminist fantasy retelling of King Lear by Shakespeare, which is by far my personal favorite of his work, so I am definitely looking forward to getting into this one. So for the next prompt from my team, it is Rearview Mirror, which is to read an indie published book or one that was just published more than 5 years ago. So for this I've chosen Zenlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. Now this was originally self-published and then was picked up by Orbit just a couple years ago, and it's really jumped in popularity since then, but it was originally, like I said, self-published and was published originally back in 2013, so still counts. Now, I've heard a fair deal of praise for this series, which centers around Thomas Zenlin and his journey ascending up the legendary Tower of Babel in search of his missing wife, Maria, on their honeymoon. Now, this next book, I'm not quite as sure what prompt to categorize it under. It probably could go under one of the conspiracy prompts, or at least the first and even second in the series could. But this one, well, I don't want to spoil too much, but which I kind of already have, I guess. But anyway, which would be the disability or deaf representation prompt. So instead I am using for one of the Beast Team's prompts, which is Whispering Woods, which is to read an underhyped book or just one you haven't really heard much about. This is The Last Uncharted Sky by Curtis Craddock, which is the third and final in the Risen Kingdoms trilogy. Now, I can probably count on one hand the number of booktubers I've heard talk about this series, but I've personally enjoyed the first two. This is a steampunk fantasy set in a setting that's fairly similar to about 17th century Europe and centers around two characters, Princess Isabelle de Zephyr and father figure and guardian, King's Own musketeer Jean-Claude. Now, I don't want to talk about this too much. Like I said, it's the finale to a series, but I would recommend An Alchemy of Masamirs and the follow-up A Labyrinth of Scions and Sorcery, which I actually preferred a little bit more. Next up is another prompt from the Beast, which is Hydras Hangout, which, as the name implies, is a book that features mythology. That I will be reading The Last Olympian by Rick Riordan, which is the fifth and final of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series, which, as you've known if you've been watching my videos, I've been reading over the last few months and enjoying as I've continued it this far. So I'm looking forward to the finale. Next up is the one of the ghost prompts that I will be doing. Under the Bed, read a book by a Black Indigenous person of color author that is new to you. For this I have chosen Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Rowanhorse. This is a post-apocalyptic urban fantasy that's heavily based upon and inspired by Navajo mythology and folklore. centers around Maggie, a monster hunter who is hired to find a young girl. Now, this last book I'm going to talk about for the month is one that I kind of had another hard time figuring out a category to fit it with, and well, I wanted to read it, so I did what needed to be done. That is The Shadow Throne by Django Wexler. That is the second in his Shadow Campaigns Flintlock fantasy series, the follow-up to 1,000 Names, which I read a couple months ago now, back in July, and enjoyed fairly well. I gave it 3.75. Now, as I said, I had a bit of trouble trying to figure out where to fit this with the prompts, and I've ended up going with another Beast prompt, Lair of the Babadook, which requires reading a book featuring LGBTQIA+ representation. Now, one of the two main point of view protagonists of the series, Winter Earringlass, is a lesbian, possibly bisexual, and from what I've heard, this second book does feature a bit more of a romantic plot line for her. So there we go. Alright, there we have it. My reading plans for this month when I'm not busy painting the medieval map in Crusader King. Like I said, I will include links to the 2 readathons in the description box down below in case you are interested in checking them out and participating. If you enjoy this video, please do give it a like and consider a subscription. So I will see you book time, same book channel.